I found the Dead Zone in a happy accident through looking for some other underlying rights for another work, for another project. I stumbled across this particular piece because it was owned by the same library. The Dead Zone was an idea that came from this library. By looking at it, I said, wow, this would make a really cool idea for a television series.
Well, the creation of the show was not particularly unusual as things go in this business. I got a call from my agent, Rob Rothman, who said that UPN had bought a pitch from a fellow named Lloyd Seagan.
Dino De Laurentiis had made the movie many years ago as an adaptation of Stephen King's book. And when he made that adaptation and Mr. King sold the underlying rights to do the movie, he also sold and granted the rights to do a television series.
I was not familiar with it, or at least I didn't remember it very well. I remembered there was a movie. And I went out and rented the movie, and I went out and bought the book, and looked at it, read it, and called my agent back and said, you know, yeah, and I know Lloyd from conversations, we have the same lawyer. So, you know, I got together with Lloyd, we sat down, we chatted about it.
Michael Piller was the person that I originally thought of to write this, and in fact, at the time, he continues to be partnered with his son, Sean Piller.
Lloyd is a kind of a family friend now, and he and my father and I share the same lawyer and have for years, and Lloyd comes from the feature world and we come from the TV world. And Lloyd he's been a student and fan of television, you know, his whole life, as I've been of features, and it kind of worked out that he found this property, the Dead Zone, that we were fans of, and basically decided to give it a whirl together, and it turned out that it turned into this really cool, sort of unique experience that sort of had this family dynamic on the set and in the development process and the sales process, and turned into a really cool experience.
Michael Piller brought with him the sensibilities that he had been able to produce consistently with the franchise that Gene Roddenberry created called Star Trek. And he brought together his talents on The Next Generation, co-created Deep Space Nine, and Voyager. What was common to those shows is not dissimilar to The Dead Zone, creating great characters, great stories, and the ability to take advantage of the great foundations of an underlying work, a beloved author in the case of Stephen King, and to be able to create something wholly original and fresh. And that was the challenge of The Dead Zone, and I hope that we met it.
I had a very clear vision of what I wanted to do very early in the process. I read the book and I said, this book is like a television pilot. It really tells the story of a guy who has to adjust to a whole new life and explore the world that he lives in through new eyes, if you will. That to me was very, very appealing as a writer, because it gave me the opportunity to do what I love to do, what I did on Star Trek, and that's to really explore the human condition. That's what this guy is doing.
Lloyd originally was a fan of Michael's because of a script he wrote, and was a fan of Star Trek, actually, originally. And actually held on to the property when he finally got it after wrangling in some libraries, and waited a year for us to be available from our other deal. And decided that we were the guys to make the show with, and basically we developed it with him and then took it to UPN, which we made the pilot with them, and for political reasons and financial reasons it ended up not going on that network, and then we ended up on USA, luckily, and the rest is kind of the history of the summer.
And I had read a script of Michael's many, many, many years ago and fell in love with it. And it was actually a feature script, because my discipline prior to The Dead Zone had been motion pictures. So when it was time to do The Dead Zone and really bring on a partner who could realize the same passion that I had for it, Michael Piller was the only person I really wanted to do it.
Together we sat down with the folks at UPN. We pitched this vision, which was, the original vision was to say, all right, look, let's take the book as sort of our template, because one version of the pitch was, we pick up the series where the book ends, and Johnny's on the run after killing or trying to kill Stilson, the politician. And it's fundamentally, we've seen that, the fugitive, you know, and he's the fugitive with psychic powers. Derivative, I felt, didn't want to do that series. But I was interested in the beginning and middle of the book as a template for the first season, using that as sort of our tentpole to build stories week by week that were little chapters in Johnny's life, because obviously a book only has so much time, so much pages to get to those various little stories, but we have a lot more ability to tell those kind of stories.
Basically, I'm in charge of making sure the vision from the scripts gets transferred to the screen. And I prep all the directors, I'm in all the development meetings in the script side, all the way through to the shooting, the post, and the final mix.
One of the great fortunes that we all lucked into was when somebody, and I think it was at Lionsgate, suggested Rob Lieberman. And we sent Rob the script, and he fell in love with the script and came in and described in a 20-minute meeting the vision that he had for this and how he would do this scene and how this scene was going to work. And everything that he was saying as a director were things that I had seen in my mind when I was writing the teleplay.
Well, I was sent a script by Michael Piller, story by Michael and Sean Piller, and I do a pilot almost every season. And I've had a pretty good track record going into this season. I think I was about 11 for 13, and now I'm 12 for 14 of shows that have gone to series from pilots that I've made. And I look for pilots that I think I can bring something to the party on, and they have a certain level of originality. And when I read this, besides being a Stephen King fan myself, this piece of material struck a particular chord with me because, as I termed it, it was the intersection between kind of horror and heart, which are two things that I have an affinity for and a certain, I gravitate to.
2 words, Rob Lieberman. Rob Lieberman is an extraordinary person. He's an extraordinary talent. And he's extraordinary for 2 reasons. He's one of the few people that I've ever met in my career, and I've had the pleasure and privilege of working with many directors. But many directors that I've worked with have one of 2 abilities, which is one, to seek out the commercial aspects of a work, or to seek out the artistic aspects of the work. Rob combines the 2. His discipline, coming from the worlds of advertising and the artistic community, he himself is a painter, he's a photographer, but he also understands how to sell the message and knows how to pluck the emotional heartstrings and evoke the emotions that this piece needed.
I tried to make it, my approach to it was to make it as realistic as I could, not make it like a genre movie, but make it like a regular dramatic movie. So when I read the script for The Dead Zone, I realized that this was another opportunity to do the same thing. To be able to create not just the typical genre film, but a genre, Stephen King kind of thriller, scary movie. But at the core of it, there would be a great human, emotional content component. And I thought that Michael Piller had rung that bell very well. And I really felt that I could render it really well based on what I had read.
He has an ability, a unique ability in my opinion, to take what's on that page and make it come alive in a way that perhaps even the authors themselves, even me as a producer who had visions reading the script, could never imagine.
Well, I think the changes that we made were made fundamentally to help it be a television series. The book had made decisions that would keep Sarah and Johnny apart. That was really his goal, because he wanted Johnny to go off on a different journey. For a television series, wanted to keep the sexual tension between Sarah and Johnny alive. So I wanted to do things that would bring Johnny and Sarah closer together for the length of the series. And one of those decisions, obviously, was to make the child that Sarah had while Johnny was in a coma Johnny's child. There was no question who I wanted for Johnny. I mean, it was the most difficult casting decision you can make when somebody like Christopher Walken has established that character in a motion picture. I mean, it's akin to what happened with MASH, when you had a great cast of characters in the movie. How do you replace those indelible portraits with other actors? Well, obviously they figured out a way to do it. I felt we needed someone who was off-center, like Christopher Walken, but more accessible for a television audience than perhaps Christopher Walken might be, although I would watch a Christopher Walken series. So I had seen Anthony Michael Hall as Bill Gates in Pirates of Silicon Valley, and I said, "No, this is a guy who's ready to really make a comeback." And he was first on my list. I'm a little scared about giving his name out to like the network or to other people who are saying, "Well, who's your first choice?" Because they'll always kill your first choice. So I held on to it for a while. The truth is that the first response we got from his representatives was a pass. They said he didn't like the material. I was heartbroken. He didn't like my script, but as it turned out, there was a misunderstanding. We went through the process of casting dozens, interviewing dozens, if not hundreds of actors in his age range, and found a couple that were reasonably good, but I never could get him out of my mind, and ultimately I came back and I said, "Would anybody mind if I called his agent back?" This is weeks later after the pass. "Maybe I could have a cup of coffee or something with Michael." Well, I called him Anthony, then I didn't know that he liked to be called Michael. "Maybe I could have a cup of coffee with Anthony and he can tell me what he doesn't like and I can fix it." Well, I made the call, and his manager said, "You know, there's been a terrible misunderstanding. Michael hadn't read the script before, but he read it this weekend and he loves it and he wants to do it." So we brought his name to UPN, and ultimately Dean Valentine approved it.
Well, I mean, I was aware of Stephen King's books. You know, one of my favorite films growing up was The Shining. I mean, I love Nicholson in that. And, you know, I knew of the film, I had seen it, but I think I was too young to kind of appreciate it. So when I watched it again, I really soaked it up. Obviously, Walken gives a great performance. David Cronenberg is a fine Canadian director, and a director in general. And it was a well-done thing. You know, I wasn't ever going to approach doing that. I don't want to replicate him on any level, or, and I don't think the Pillars had that intention either. But it was certainly our intent to, you know, glean from the book these characters and take the best qualities of what's there. You know, basically the overall structure, and then go in a different direction. And I'm telling you, we've done only 4 episodes. We're about to complete the 4th, and it's been really a ride. You know, as a performer and as an actor.
The audition process was, it seemed like a typical audition to me. I mean, it was around pilot season time, so there were a lot of auditions going on. I had, you know, a few a day. And this was one of them. And I had read the script and thought it was really well written. And of course, I knew Michael Pillar's work from before, from Star Trek. So I was pretty excited about it. And the first read, Michael Pillar was there, and that was nice to see him. And it went well, and it was a pretty straightforward read. And then I got a call saying that I had a call back, and at that point they wanted to have women come in and read with Anthony Michael Hall to see what the chemistry would be like. And I think that was really the one that cinched it, because that's so important, is to see that chemistry between 2 actors in a room. And when I finished doing the scene with him, I thought, wow, that felt so great, and I hope that they thought that. And they did.
Well, it was difficult because I had to, you know, do the exact scene that somebody else had already done when we did reshoots. And she was a lot, you know, tougher than, let's say, that I've been playing her. So I was sort of, had to be a little bit more tough when I was doing the reshoots at the beginning of that had been originally written for somebody else, and so that was tough. I definitely tried to make it my own, but there were certain things that really couldn't be changed, just to keep, you know, continuity of what was going on with the other characters and how they, you know, were responding to her. And but no, I definitely don't mimic people. You know, I make it my own and do my own homework and, you know, make her own history. And I'm sure the history that I made for Dana was completely different than what the other girl had made.
The other was the first meeting, sort of exploratory meeting, was very old Hollywood. It was suffused with courtesy, genuine respect on all our parts toward one another. They knew my credits, not just the things that Michael and I, the Star Trek that Michael and I did, but the things I had done in the prior 3 months, some things that were upcoming. They'd done a kind of research that is extremely uncommon in this business, and I felt prized in a way that most actors don't when they sit down in any meeting these days. It was very old Hollywood.
From the outset, it was something that was mentioned to me by Lloyd Seagan, who's one of our executive producers, that we would really create a family environment on a set, and he was right. It really has been that. I mean, Michael's a really nice man, very kind, very down to earth, and you know, in the television business, he's very respected as a showrunner that's trusted and, you know, respected in the industry, and that's everything in terms of a television network. They want to know they can rely upon a creative producer that can really deliver the goods, and he's had so much success with the Star Trek series, and even going back to Simon & Simon and all these things. It's great to know you're in great hands like that, and that the scripts keep getting better, and they really do. And so it's very encouraging, and it makes me feel great about what I'm doing.